All right. I've just got done reading the poem After Apple Picking by Robert Frost. If you're coming straight to this one, you can go back and watch After Apple Picking if you want to. It's not very long, and I read that right before I read this one. I'm on a Robert Frost kick. I have been since I discovered Robert Frost as a teenager, so it's lasted quite a while. He's the kind of poet that I go to when I'm feeling glum, and I can read it and sort of process some emotions, or just sort of he speaks to me. All right, and this poem is a sad poem. It's called Out Out, and I love it because it's sad. Because life doesn't always have a happy ending, and this poem is very stark and showing us that, right? So it's called Out Out. Well, I'll talk a little bit about it after I'm finished reading it, but it's in my Robert Frost collection. And as I read it, you don't have anything to look at probably to follow along. I just want you to picture the scene that he's describing. He starts by talking about, sort of the setting, and then he focuses in on the main character of the poem, this boy, okay? And just think about what's happening in his life and what's going on with this boy and why he's working. Remember, Robert Frost lived 100 years ago. Children worked earlier, things like that. Out, out. The buzzsaw snarled and rattled in the yard and made dust and dropped stove-length sticks of wood, sweet-scented stuff when the breeze drew across it. And from there, those that lifted eyes could count 5 mountain ranges, one behind the other, under the sunset far into Vermont. And the saw snarled and rattled as it ran light or had to bear a load. And nothing happened. Day was all but done. Call it a day, I wish they might have said, to please the boy, by giving him the half hour that a boy counts so much when saved from work. His sister stood beside them in her apron to tell them, supper. At the word, the saw, as if to prove saws knew what supper meant, leaped out at the boy's hand, or seemed to leap. He must have given the hand. However it was, neither refused the meeting. But the hand! The boy's first outcry was a rueful laugh. As he swung toward them, holding up the hand, half in appeal, but half as if to keep the life from spilling. Then the boy saw all. Since he was old enough to know, big boy doing a man's work, though a child at heart, he saw all spoiled. Don't let him cut my hand off. The doctor, when he comes, don't let him, sister. So, but the hand was gone already. The doctor put him in the dark of ether. He lay and puffed his lips out with his breath. And then the watcher at his pulse took fright. No one believed. They listened at his heart, little, less, nothing. And that ended it. No more to build on there. And they, since they were not the one dead, turned to their affairs. And that's Out Out. That's Out Out by Robert Frost. All right? I love this because we see this innocent kid who's working in the lumber mill or wherever he's working, and Robert Frost gets it the way I see my kids. 6th period. I know you're watching the clock and you can't wait. You want free time. You want to go. That's this kid who's working. and his innocence is ruined. His hand gets cut, and he watches it, and he sees all spoiled right in that moment. And then he dies. He bleeds out. But the world, because the world is a cold, indifferent place, spins on, right? And all the people around him, well, they weren't the ones dead, and they move on with their lives. It's a remarkably sad poem, and I like to read it when I'm feeling sad, because that's catharsis, right? Then we can deal with these emotions. We can process it without having to overly experience it. I didn't get my hand cut off yet. I'm not dying today, but I can experience this boy's loss, and I can sort of cleanse myself of that emotion and move on. And that's one of the reasons I love Robert Frost, and I highly recommend him to anybody. I might read one or two more Robert Frost poems for tonight. The sun's getting a little low, so soon it's not going to be bright enough in here. So I'll do another video for whatever I decide to read next. I think I know what I'm going to do. It's going to be a more well-known Robert Frost poem that probably you've heard of if you've read any poetry. So I'll move on. We'll start a next one. But thank you very much for listening to Out Out.